record, and hi. All right, you're up.
All right. We're early. That's kind of a bad thing for me. Good morning, class.
Good morning, Gary.
Good. All you guys that haven't logged in yet because it's not 10 after 10, or maybe this isn't how it used to be at the old. Very good meal on my coffee. So, let's see, two of you guys didn't go see, did you go see Kevin Irot? When was that, Monday? You didn't? Was building silly hold up. You were there too? Okay, good. All right.
David was there.
Oh, David wasn't there.
What? Oh,
So they were talking about the contract, so did you go read the contract after Stacy said your contract calls for the best, like most super powered title policy you can get? I don't think it does. I don't think she
You can't put that in there?
can. She thought it was default. I'm not reading it that way. She was talking about paragraph 13, title investing. Within time specified in paragraph 14, buyer shall be provided a current preliminary title report, blah, blah, blah. E, buyer shall receive a CLTA, ALTA homeowner's policy of title insurance if applicable to the type of the property and buyer. And saying there, it's like, you're going to get like the biggest, baddest Eagle policy from First American ever. And I thought, it felt to me like Stacy said, don't worry about it. It's like already in the contract. I don't, if it's somewhere else, I don't know where it is.
You get it from them, that's the one you get.
Yeah, they're going to default to it. Yeah. Did everybody know what he was talking about? And then I'll get off that because I thought he used an awful lot of terms that were kind of like, well, we usually don't talk about that much. Like he said, you know how California was all, it was Mexican, Spanish, and then it was Mexican, and then it was ranchos. And he goes, everybody knows about the ranchos, right? He just nods, and I'm thinking, probably not. Some of these people are from back east or up north. Mexicans never got their ready. I mentioned that to Stacy, and I said, that's how I learned it all. Byron would just talk. You'd have to go find out what the hell he was talking about because you kind of didn't want to stop and go, what are you talking about? It used to frustrate the hell out of it. So that was kind of a lead-in almost. I do a class in that. Then at the board office, I did it at a women's council thing one time. So I teach all that title junk, like where lots and blocks came from and stuff one of these days if you want to do that. Like maybe closer to the holidays when no one cares about contracts. Or do something else with it. But I'm glad I remembered to bring that up. And of course, you know why I remember to bring it up because I took my turn break. So if I remember right, we're on paragraph 14. Does anybody remember something different else, or does anybody actually remember correctly? That would be a huge
one. I think you're right, because I remember we were going to stop at 12, and then you said, oh, why don't we just finish out the page? I think you're right.
Cool. All right. Excellent. Paragraph 14. We used to, back in the webinar days, we used to spend a whole day on paragraph 14 because it's once you get through the first few pages, the folds are all in the contract. Who's getting this with the property? Who's not getting that? What are we doing with termite and all that junk? Oh, but is it cold in here?
We call them.
Like 66 degrees.
All the way, come out and take a look at it. I don't know, but it's cold in here, and it says the heat's on, and it's cold.
So
I'm gonna say yes.
Who had the president's mind to bring a coat besides me? Nobody nice shirt. I got kind of like that.
I have one in the car.
Mine's in the car.
All right, cool. Yay.
There's not weenies like you, Gary.
Bob went to go get one. So paragraph 14 is, to a certain extent, I think where the rubber meets the road in the contract. Because you gotta, there's all this, like, when I used to work for Marcus Rednick, and he was giving us money before payday ever got there or anything. And he said, we're all nice at first. Everybody's nice at the beginning. First part of the contract, we're all making nice. This part of the contract is where people start trying to kind of push their issues and push their requests for repairs and push all their junk. And all of that stuff basically comes out of paragraph 14. Dueling meters. Don't pay the rest of you people, if anybody's logged in, you have your own heater because you will not feel warm. It's not internet heat. I'll just turn mine on. So paragraph 14, time periods, removal of contingencies, cancellation rights, blah, 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 blah in there. Paragraph 14A, seller has 7, or you can change it, days to do what? And how long we closures? Freaking everything. And it's listed right there. If you're ever wondering, like, what does my seller have to do in that first 7 days? It's everything they're responsible for under paragraphs 5, 6, 7, 8B, 5, 10A, B, C, and F, 11A, and 13A. Just pretty much everything the seller has to do has to happen in that 7 days.
I think that's realistic.
I never have thought that was realistic, ever. Do you? I mean, isn't that snug?
Yeah.
Like you're a couple of days in, you're kind of hoping the deposit shows up, and then you start, things start grinding away. And if title gets the prelim out in 7 days, like, you should stick with them, I guess. It's like, good luck with that. I'm getting escrow instructions a week before it closes now. Yeah, all that stuff. So over the years, I've changed both of those numbers. I've changed that 17 and 14B when they changed some of the other deadlines to 21 days for the buyer. We started just writing 21 and everything, and we kind of waited for the blowback. But at the same time, Century 21 started doing it, so it didn't happen because that's where it was going to come. And in that 14M, I figured, yeah, the buyer's going to take 3 weeks to do all of his stuff. Give the seller, like, I don't know, 2 weeks. And just make them weeks. 17 days, 19 days. What's up with that? 14 days is 2 weeks. So you got acceptance on a Wednesday, and 2 Wednesdays from then, seller's got to be done. I think 14 days is a lot more reasonable. And it's just going to save you, I think, a little bit of grief from having to pay attention to that 7 days as a buyer's agent, even to make sure any of that stuff got done. I mean, the termite report and all that stuff is supposed to come out of there in that 7 days. It's just, I think, unrealistic is exactly. There's a little list there of what it's supposed to do. And then if the seller doesn't comply, then what happens? I just ran into this. I think it's today, Wednesday, Monday. So if the seller doesn't comply, can the buyer cancel? After a notice to perform. Somebody called me up complaining about some other agent trying to cancel the escrow. We're canceling at 5. They sent them emails asking for their stuff. Never sent them notice. So the contract says you may cancel in just about every instance after a notice to perform is the issue. And then back over on that. How long after the notice of perform, notice to perform, notice to buyer to perform, notice to seller to perform, does the other party have to perform, or then you can cancel 2 days? It's always days, took all the hours out.
Item E.
Pardon?
Item E.
Item E. Exactly right. That's where if you were going to change it, you would change it because the form is actually hearkening back to the contract.
And be cautious because I've seen agents throw a 30 in there just to, I'll send you a notice just to delay the escrow and they can clean up whatever they need. And it's not that it's wrong. That's what everybody agreed on. Be cautious.
Even though somebody wasn't watching when they agreed. It's funny, right? I mean, you don't know anything about contracts, but they're smart enough to do that. You guys have like selective learning. And that whole thing's kind of funny, I think, because you got two options as the noticing party. And they're like, just let it go on or cancel. You have to throw your whole deal away just to get the buyer or the seller off their keister to get their stuff. So it's still tough. At least you have cancellation rights. You need to get out of the deal, you can. So,
And it is not in good faith. If somebody says, I'm operating in good faith, therefore you can't cancel me even if you send me a notice, I'm operating in good faith to keep this deal moving forward. Great, thank you, but dates are dates. Times are times. If I send you the notice, it doesn't mean that the notice is voided because we're operating in good faith. The notice is the notice. Perform or get out of the way.
Well, if you're operating in good faith, you wouldn't receive the notice.
yeah, exactly.
We'll get that response too.
Who are these?
Someone that doesn't come to training.
Well, that's somebody that's like read part of it because they've been told there's a duty of good faith, like lean on the good faith grounds.
Yeah.
And right, yeah, if you're operating in good faith, you've probably waived your contingencies. I mean, what better faith is there than on the 17th day, you know everything you need to do, you're just keeping it going, you're avoiding the notice and everything. I mean, that's really operating under the auspices and within, like you said, the four corners of the contract, for sure. So the seller has 7 days or whatever you put in there, or whatever they decide is okay to. They get all their stuff done, and the buyer has 17 days to get like tons of stuff. But I think the main thing to know about the buyer's 17 days or whatever you put in there, like I said, many people have been changing that to 21 to match it up with the rest of the contract.
There's nothing to predict on a day. So I got 7 days. So if you really think it's a shaky deal, don't get out of it. You send your notice to form on the 5th day, but you have 2 days, 7 days notice. Back out.
Right. Yeah, the notice to perform can be no earlier than the notice period before the day. And if you notice somebody, we tell the clients that all the time, right? It's like, well, your contingency period's up in 21 days. You're going to screw around and not notice us for a day or two. Then we'll pick up another 2 days. Now we got a 25-day contingency. So if you're on top of that notice, yeah, if it's a 21-day contingency period, you notice it on day 19, and then midnight on day 21, fish are cut bait. And you've made a hard date out of it. Yeah, you don't have to wait till that day to notice.
So you should be having your conversation with your client on day 18 to look like you're on top of it. Hey, should we do this? Are you wanting us to know this? At the end of the day, they're the ones saying, how much pressure do you want to put on these people? But I think a good agent would have that conversation a day, 2 days before to give yourself time to make that notice, get it signed.
Absolutely, instead of wait till day 21 to open a dialogue on like, hey, did I tell you how these contingencies work? It's kind of go on forever unless we do something. Like, no, a week ago it was a good time.
Yeah, I think I would do that if the transaction is shaky. Confidence.
I disagree. It's not our decision to make. It's the client's.
Yeah, I think it's you look like you know what you're doing. I mean, they don't have to do anything, but you tell them, okay, just so you know, we talked about this when we started. We're coming up on some of those deadlines. You remember how they work, go over it, you know. And so be thinking about what you want to do if these guys get a little swirly here in a couple of days. Yeah, okay, all right. You can lay awake at night for the next 3 days. What do I do? What do I do? I don't know what to do. David. David put it right on. And it's, yeah, the ultimate, I mean, the parties of the contract are who, right? The purchase contract. Who are the parties? The sellers and buyers. Buyer and the seller. Nobody else is in that deal. Nobody else gets to make any decisions, but somebody else is counted on actually for advice, right? You're kind of supposed to know what's going on. So when they go, hey, what the hell is happening here? You're that guy, that gal.
Because if you don't have that conversation, day 21 comes, and you're like, oh, no big deal. Day 23 comes, something happens on day 24, you guys ever prepped your client, they're going to be like, well, why don't we get to keep their deposit? Why didn't you do the job? And why are we arguing about this when the contingency is already passed? Why are we just having this conversation now a week later when there's a problem. And it'll always fall back on you. You'll be the bad guy. Even if you were trying, to protect your client, you're thinking in good faith, like, oh, no big deal. Nothing's gonna happen.
Not you guys.
Yeah, that's right. That's why we're having that conversation day 18.
Yeah, that's what they talk about too. It's like, so we get their deposit, right? So hopefully you kind of explain that to no. Deposits do make a difference. You tell people all the time, now we're going to roll all the way back to page one. It's like, I don't care if you make them put down $100,000 deposit, you're probably not going to get it anyway. But it'll make your buyer act different. I just went through that. I had a contingency period end on, I think it was October 25th. I finally got them all waived, I think Monday. Just for trying to like, come on, buddy, come on, you have 25 grand up. He was like, so you told me it's at risk, right? And he thought at risk was in a couple of days, everybody in that deal is calling a lawyer because that's kind of how this guy operates. He's never bought a house before, as it turns out, but he does a lot of business. Apparently spends a lot of time talking to attorneys. Whenever you tell him something might happen, he's thinking, oh, there goes 10 grand. Dang it. It's hard to get that guy to waiver. And it worked out because I'm on both sides of that deal. So he got it. We got it to a place where, and speaking of good faith, where he really didn't have any contingencies left. We had his loan approved. We were ready to go to docs. The guy was signed off on the appraisal. The funder had signed off on every condition that they knew about. Escrow was ready to take care of their conditions. The inspections were all done already like a week before, all that stuff. So we basically had taken away his ability to have a contingency in good faith, because it says, for instance, on the loan, buyer will use be diligent or some junk like that in getting a loan. Got the loan, like the banks standing around waiting to cash, waiting to send the money to escrow. So like, you're not getting out of that finance contingency. I don't even care if it's still here. That's a breach of your duty of good faith. It's kind of the other way we got it.
So go back on that. Okay, so if they had a contingency in place.
Yeah.
And their loan was fully approved, then that contingency, would you argue that that contingency has been met?
Yeah, I would, and would you win? Who's paid more money, the bigger attorney? It's like who's got the best story. But I believe that there's an underlying and an overarching at the same time duty of good faith. Like, you don't get to BS me and get out of this deal. You got to mean it. Like, okay, my loan contingency is I'm leaving because I couldn't get the loan. You mean because you wouldn't let Rabobank send the check to escrow? That's crap.
Okay.
You're wrong.
A duty of good faith.
Yeah, you have a duty of both parties have throughout the entire transaction, breach of good, or a duty of that operating good faith, which is where they get that. Well, we're acting in good faith. Like, no, you're not.
And so that would come right at the close of escrow, someone pulls funds or pulls closing, and then says, "Oh, I have my loan contingency, and we get the money." You have to show evidence.
Yeah. So now you got a problem, right? Now you got everybody tied up. Escrow's really unhappy because you know how they hate to get stuck in those deals where it's like there's a fight right at the end. But, yep, that's the argument I would use. That's a breach of duty of good faith to use a contingency that basically has been satisfied. So if your contingency is to be diligent, get your loan and all that stuff, and you have to have your loan approved and full approval. I mean, everybody was right down to the funder was on board. We were going to go to docs like a week ago Monday. And the seller held him off a little bit because he's doing an exchange. He wasn't quite, we were going to close a month early and the seller wasn't ready. So when does that happen? But with an exchange, it could happen. There's a lot of timing that has to take place right at the end of the year. Like now, they get nervous about the dates. But when the seller held the guy out, I mean, the bank was ready to go. They had the appointment set up and signed docs and all that stuff. And then as things went on, the guy is saying, well, I don't want to waive the rest of I don't want to waive my loan contingency. Everything else had already been waived. The stuff that was going to get him out of this kind of beat up property. He'd already waived his inspection contingency and everything else, all contingencies except the loan. So when we stopped the bank from funding the loan from the seller's side, it's like, oh, you got to have that contingency anymore. That's a done deal. There's a little opinion in there. Yeah.
So you would force the sale. I mean, that's if it came down to it. You're like forcing them to buy the house at that point.
Well, there's another argument right there. Do you ever want to force anybody to do anything? Well, we don't, right? The seller might be unhappy, but I don't know. I think what you can force, so to speak, as a contract will force it, is they lose their deposit. Nobody ever has to buy a house. That's why there's a good faith deposit. We used to call them good faith deposits. I don't know why they call them earnest money. It was good. They called them good faith for a reason. It's like, yeah, I got my 25 grand up. Be diligent, do my stuff, and like that 25 grand is the escrow's already cashed that check, just so you know, I'm not kidding. But that's worst case, I think, for a buyer. Somebody loses their deposit, they don't ever have to buy the house. The seller might have to sell them. We've seen deals where we've got somebody in the escrow and muddled along for a week or 10 days or something. The seller starts getting real dodgy, and they're going, we were just kind of trying to test the market. We really didn't want to sell. I've seen it happen 3 times. Sellers trying to back out of an escrow like a month in. That's really hard to do. You better have a pretty understanding buyer on the end. I've seen generally after that, in fact, you'll see an agreement show up where and they need to cloud the title to make it work, but you see an agreement show up where the buyer takes an option. Like, okay, I'm going to believe your story about why you can't sell this house to me, but we're invested somehow, emotionally or something. We want to buy your house. So if you ever sell that house, like in the next 3 years or something, you have to sell it to me. I've seen buyers and sellers sign agreements like that on every one of those instances. None of those closed, and everybody signed. One of them closed. The other ones did. Everybody signed an agreement that basically gave the buyer an option to purchase. But if you don't record it and cloud the title, nobody's memory's that good. 3 years down the road, 6 of those agents are out of the business. Who knows what's going on? That agreement never made it into Sky Slope. That could happen. So, where are we now? Oh, so back to what does the buyer have to do in the what I usually call. So the buyer has 21 days to do what? And right now, let's kind of limit the discussion, I think, to the inspections and the request for repairs and that kind of stuff. Like I got, is the property going to be okay? So in the 21 days, what does the buyer have to do? Yeah, that could be. Yeah, the contingency period is 21 days long. So there's things he needs to do during that 21 days where he's going to kind of decide whether he's going to remove his contingencies or keep them going. What else are you got to do all your inspections. So if you want something done, your request for repairs has to go out during that 21 days, not after. You don't take 21 days to do all the inspections and then a week to think about it. On day 21, you're according to the contract. If Bob's doing your deal, you got your notice on day 19. Things are coming to a head. So not only do you have to get everything done, if you want repairs, you've got to ask for those repairs during that 21 days too. Trying to apply to 21 days. Okay. Probably ought to look at that. Request for repair. This is so we number it, right? Could there be more? There could be a few. They need to work on these forms too. It's you start doing the offer counter offer thing with the request for repairs and the reply and response. And there's really not enough room to write. We need to do something about that. We went through like 4 sets of these on a deal I did about a year ago. They got really messy and we were typing all over the form. So we had to boil it down to a contract addendum by the time we got done so everybody would know what the heck's going on. We still got in a monetary discussion about the spa cover up there. Was that part of the stuff that was supposed to get done? So I bought him an $1,800 spa cover. Any other agent paid half, unless they're a little hard after 4 months of asking. So pay attention.
It stinks.
make sure it's clear. And, yeah, could have been a little, when I went back and looked, could have been a little better language. Final deal. So, okay, request for repairs one. So, I wanted to show. Blah, 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 blah. So here's the form you would use to ask for repairs. And we're on day 21, maybe, right? So with this form, there's no contingency removal attached. You might send one with it, you know, to say, look, we're done. I need these repairs done, you know. But I'm waiving all my contingencies so that you know I'm really, you know, over the top in good faith and all that stuff. So the argument could be made that you can't ask for repairs anymore once you've waived your contingencies. So do this first, and then this should be at the bottom.
Yes, the seller response.
Yes, and the seller response, now there's a seller response at the bottom, or in the seal form, there's a place for the seller at that point to say, seller agrees to a buyer's request or part of it or whatever with the other form. Provided in writing, buyer removes the physical inspection contingency, or if you check this, buyer removes those contingencies identified on the attached contingency removal form. So send this form before you send your contingency removal, and you'll hear back from the seller on what they want you to do. They might say your physical inspection is enough. Maybe you're on day 12, you're like, done. The house is a gem, you know, no worries. One little thing you need done, you probably think they're going to do it. That's okay. So you're asking a little early on. Because once you start this and you settle it, you can't ask for anything else, which is a kind of a gross generalization, but you're all done asking for stuff to get fixed. There's no going back to the well every once a week on this request for repairs.
They'll try, but just say no.
Yeah, it's like, no, man, read the contract, read the request for repairs. Like you gotta kind of know what you're doing.
I don't know, Trina's on. Lady did a full contingency release day 1 to get the property, and then ended up doing a request for repair day 12, 14, and our response was no. And she got infuriated, just so mad that we came in over the top, offered $10,000 more, and you're not going to give us $1,200 worth of repairs? Nope. You released all your contingencies. It was a cash sale. No, we're not. And she literally, we had pulled the phone back. That's how you make bad agents. You make, you know, da 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 da. And it's like, we didn't make you release your contingencies. We didn't make you do 10,000 over. That's the offer you presented. So, no, we're not going to do it.
It's called a bait and switch where I'm from.
That was the agent. We yelled at him.
Oh,
Basically said,
well, you didn't have a flip phone. So you
yeah, if you do business like that, you're not going to go very far in this industry. Okay.
Basically, she didn't do her job.
Well, she did do her job. She just tried to backpedal and try to get some stuff because they did repair.
Yeah, it's okay to ask, right? It's like you can send in a request for repairs if you want. Hey, we did our inspections even though we had no inspection contingency. We found some stuff. Hey, did you guys do it? Like, no. Okay. We have no leverage.
She felt guilty or like gross inside, and she had to tell her no. And it's like, you're fine. We didn't do anything wrong.
Well, that other agent did do her job, because I never realized that.
Well, they did in order to get this property. They did
That's
what
not
they
doing
did.
her job.
So what is that? What is that deny? No good faith. It was a bad faith deal to start with.
It's not our place to make the seller's decision or the buyer's decision. They were obviously doing
Yeah, but
what
I'm
they were
just saying
doing.
that agent did not do her job.
I feel the same way. Yeah. So
That's hard to
they'll
say.
try. The point is they'll
You'll get a
try.
pushy, smart aleck client every once in a while too that says, I know what I'm doing.
Anytime. Type A personalities and they come over the top on you. Just say no. You know, I respectfully say no.
Well, you're right, man. Yeah, right.
You
Yeah.
can ask, but,
So let's you're right. Let's do that. Let's look at that. So we wind up with a request for repair, blah, blah, blah. And the seller can respond down at the bottom. You can just do it all in one form. Maybe if David's client had said, yeah, whatever that thing is for 1,200, we were going to kind of do that. Yeah, tell them yes. All right, okay, fine. So they would just sign here and say, yeah, we'll do that. They have the option to do that. They have another option. How do I find that farm's name? Wish I could just talk.
add on that, Gary? I'm sorry.
No,
If you're
go ahead.
negotiating
I'm
on a
counting on this
repair,
discussion kind of thing. I
and
think
then
it's
they
great.
come back and have a whole list, and it seems like a valid list. Like, oh, I need these repairs done in order to close this deal. And then they try to sell you on, well, just give us money. You're in a negotiation. You're in a sales pitch right now. So if they really need the repair done because it's going to jeopardize the transaction, then they'll need to have the repair done before they close the escrow. But if they use the repair to try to get credits, just know that you're in a sales pitch and a negotiation. The person's just trying to get a better deal. Most likely that won't jeopardize, because money won't fix the problem, and if the money won't make the bank go away on that repair. So if the bank is saying the repair has to be done, then the repair has to be done here. But if they're like, oh, this house and the repairs need to be done, but we'll just take some money, just know you're negotiating.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, sometimes you can say there's, this place, maybe it's worse than we thought it was, but we know you don't want to do anything, so give me 10 grand.
How do you hear these are safety items?
Oh my God, yeah, these are health and safety stuff, and they're required by the lender. You are full of beans, right? Working on nothing.
You gotta read through the.
They're kind of, right? I mean, VA and FHA, the appraisal will go in there like the stereo fell off, they're gonna go stereo fell off. Seller have to fix that? Free none. Somebody's gonna, or the appraiser's gonna say, hey, we're not doing this deal.
If it's a bank required, tell them, send me the conditions. Confirm what you're telling me. I trust you, but I want to verify.
Trust but verify.
But I want to verify. Send me the conditions. And if it's a valid and there are conditions, then you know that this person's not giving you a bunch of line. And they might actually believe that these repairs, because they're health and safety issues, and they are convinced that they can be done. But is it really something the bank is mandating? And I look at things like
Yeah, the appraiser's gonna be the guy that comes up with it.
the underwriter reviewed the appraisal. What are your conditions for the repair? Send that to me. Now we're truly talking about a request that needs to happen.
Don't come across so hard and jeopardize the rest of your jobs.
Yeah, that's kind of the deal, right? You're a real estate broker, brokers some real estate, don't go attorney on everybody all the time. That's broker real estate.
Oh,
That's why
absolutely.
attorneys love us so much, because we're attorneys. It's like the seller goes, tell them that. Attorneys talk for me. That's attorney stuff. It's like, wait a minute, you sure you want me to know?
I had a guy ask for hinges because they were rusted on the door. $3 hinges. I'm like, no.
How about a nice closing gift from your agent?
You gotta read through it.
Your agent's making $25,000 on this 2 units. That's what every seller and buyer does. Work. You guys are making all the money. So, go back to that. Is it B2? Yeah. So there's a request for repair, and that's why I went back to the contract. So the seller has like some options with the request for repair, right? So that buyer's agent is helping the buyer through it. Everything's great. We're within our contingency period. Everything's working like it's supposed to. And they generate a request for repairs. You're over here on the listing agent side. And the seller goes, hey, I'm not reading the whole contract again. Like, you just tell me, what do I do with this? So you can go to paragraph 14B2, which says, buyer may request that seller make repairs or take any other action, which is credits or stuff like that, regarding the property. Seller has no obligation to agree to or respond to buyer's request. Yeah, I got it. Thanks. But that's good. That's why I've always called that like the rudest clause in your entire contract. Hey, the garage door fell on the inspector's head while he was there. I hear noise.
It's noise, yeah.
That's it, yeah. We filed your form for it. What kind of crap is that? Say no. Just tell me no. Don't have to. And we'll get to the, let's do it then. Yeah, okay, so where was I going moments ago? I wish I could remember, or I wish I was back.
Harry, have you ever done that? Just not responded at all?
I've had it done to me. That's where I went back up. That's reading the contract. Yeah.
Just said receive.
And I did. Now they just like ignored me. Like, did you get that thing? Yeah, so what? They go, so what? Like, wait, what? And that's actually what happened. The garage door basically was going to kill us all. It was it? It was new construction. You're on the hook for this anyway. The approved contract for that for the 4-lot PUD thing or whatever they did was CARRPA. We're good. Don't worry about it. DRE says, yeah, just use that. In the approved DRE contract, which when you do subdivision, they'll tell you what kind of contract you're supposed to use there. It says they're getting that. So what did I buy? Garage door. Got a lot of business with those people. It's like 600 here, 900 there, 10,000, 20,000, 10,000. It works. Cheaper than buying ads. Where I got hung up there, something about the appraisal or something. Anyway, back to there. So, another story is the continuation of contingency. And I always put in this part where we had a meeting after they came out with the RPA in 2002 that had perennial contingencies. And 4 of us tried to stop it. The other 1 million realtors were okay with it. However many we had at the time. Like, oh my God, we'll never figure that out. We used to have, like they have with REO contracts, passive removal. On day 10, it's like your deposit went hard, period. That was it, buddy. This thing is like, well, maybe I'm not that. We had a checkbox for a while. It was like active, passive. And the only guy that ever checked active, where they had to sign off, was George Hagen. He's the guy that got us to read the contract. What are you doing? What does that even mean? And we didn't have a request for repairs form or anything. We had active removal and we did it with letters and addendums. So those were the days. A lot fewer pages, that's the sense. So the continuation of contingencies, I have a little story. Buyer has 21 days to get everything done. And instead of waiving my contingencies, I've decided I want some work done. So I'm going to ask to get my work done with my request for repairs, the buyer's agent. And we're going to get a response from the seller. Yes, no, maybe, ignore us, whatever. We're either going to get a signed RR or an RRRR, the response to our request for repairs, saying what they'll do, or we're going to get a notice to perform. Probably going to get one of the 3. Instead of just dead silence, which you can get that too. But in dead silence, your contingencies just keep taking along. You're okay, nobody's done to you. So we're moving through the contingency period deal. And until the seller, so the seller responds and they've given you a contingency removal form. We're going to remove everything, these 3 or whatever. You don't think you want to do that. You don't like their response. So what do? I'm back. Counter is probably a term for it, but does anybody know what the form say? Yeah, okay, there's no RRRRRR. You have to stop everything and start over, which is another thing I wish they made these go through like 5 of them or something. You have to withdraw the previous request for repairs, stop all the negotiations, submit request for repairs 2, and I always write on there that this totally replaces it, removes or replaces in its entirety request for repair 1, because you're starting to get a stack of paper. If anybody ever reviews the file, they're going to go, what happened to this request for repair? Keep reading.
So the proper protocol is to do a withdrawal of requests.
It's on there.
You just do an RR and put the clause in there that says this. What was your verbiage?
It's on. It's on the RR. Let's find out.
Yeah. So you don't just start another RR.
Well, there's I think there's checkbox. Anybody know? Scrolling for forms you can't possibly find. You see it all. That's the hell
At the top.
maybe. Good. All alphabetical and stuff. That is freaking awesome. I know it was here a minute ago.
Okay, so if you're in this predicament, have to search.
I'm gonna have to go out. Well, what I got to do is go out of. forms, give me a search box.
Click the one, X out of that, click the ones on the far right.
So I have to go here. No, I don't want a new form. I want to look for a form that's already in the transaction, right? Back there, I got to do that. Good.
Good, good, but I didn't.
I didn't. Now we learned a new skill. Yay. Blah, 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 blah.
That's where the RR.
Down here, we have to actually go to the other form. Now we're going to do what Noah said. Okay, a couple of R's. Bada boom, bada bing, bang. Real. Good old day. So the seller says, hey, how about this? So if the buyer says, I want you to do this, I guess the reason it's not on the RR, the buyer says, fix this. Seller goes, okay, because we pretty much done it. Seller has to say no or maybe or something. You got to change some sentence to this form. And with this form, it says in the middle of the RR here, in the buyer's box, buyer reply to seller response, like I'm okay with it, or I'm going to make in 1B a minor modification, which helped us from starting the whole thing over again every time. They gave us one line to modify stuff. You could get more room to write on that line if you did something. What would that be? We need those really didn't. I could get more lines. I could just put it and see my identity. What we're doing here is taking it out. It's right in the form. Withdraws request for repairs number 1 and is going to make number 2. And that's the mechanics. And then the seller says, seller agrees to buyer modification on the terms provided above, which is my C addendum thing, or seller does not agree to the buyer modification and you have to start all over. I don't know what else to do with that because the RRRR is the seller's reply. So it's hard for the buyer to reply on the seller's reply.
So if we do a light modification on 1B, then the seller would sign one of those. You know, they would check
Down there, either, yeah, I'm good with that, or like, you know what, no.
And if it's not a light modification, full on, we're going after, we just can't agree on state terms. We just withdraw our first one and we'll do it again. And that's that. So it's not like a counteroffer where once you withdraw, all those items that you did agree on are off the table. So you have to re-put it back into your account or in your request, right?
Correct. Yeah, you're replacing it. Yeah, you're taking that one away. Okay, forget that. Here's my new thing, which is kind of like a counter because basically it's a new offer. How we always teach the counters. I'll do that again.
On the contingency removal, there's a checkbox that says this is contingent upon, or that this is a part of the request for repair. So at the very top, where you say like this form is tied to this contract, it says purchase contract, and then it says request for repair.
Oh, it does?
So if you check the request for repair, and no one ever agreed to the request for repair, then that would make the contingency removal void or not executed.
All right. Come on, you in? Maybe it's in there already. You must be in there already, buddy. Let's try that. What about that? There's what will be that? Yeah, that's your own worker foot right there. Thank you, software. Like,
sent that with our request for repair. Said, we would be willing to release our contingencies if you agree to our request for repair. That means they'd have to agree to the terms in order for that to become valid. Is that an argument? Or should we?
I don't know, if it's a seller, I think that's an excellent question. I'm probably gonna have to email Neil if somebody.
Who would arbitration state issue?
Well, we went to our, on that issue, but it actually never came up. I mean, we just said that we never released our contingencies. So, well, yeah, you're right, because of that.
Can it work?
Well, it never went to arbitration, it went to mediation. She settled because she was a train wreck. So she
Yeah.
never paperwork organized at all.
I'm one in court on that for bad paper. Who do you think you are? You have a license. Story of the empty briefcases. Okay.
Would that be a safe way to do it, or is that not a safe way?
I'd say no. I'd say, well, I mean, if you just ask what would I do, I'm going to negotiate my request for repairs, and I am now waiving Jack until we're done. And the seller's going to start pushing the issue. I'm good. Now you could, pardon,
You're saying you don't recommend time together.
the seller's going to tie them together anyway on the response or not. Not everybody's paying attention. You know, the agents that are, wait, I'm operating in good faith and quoting parts of scripture all the way through it, they might catch it. Wait. The default in the request for repairs is you're waiving your physical contingency. Pretty much done with that anyway. Even the contract says if you negotiate out the request for repairs, you don't get to ask for any more stuff. Contingency period is, and that's why it's a default. There's no checkbox, and you're just done. But if somebody asked me what would you do, I'd wait. I know Stella Lane used to say that. Anybody ever hear Stella talk? Stella used to be, it was Gov and Neil Kalin and Stella Lane were like a three-man band that CAR used to send out. Back in the short sale days, Stella used to come and teach how not to go to jail on a short sale. The board all the time. When she did. You want to hear some dumb.
I think it would be.
Stella was there.
No, I couldn't tell who's.
I think it would be a safe
We
bet.
just said that.
It would probably be safe that if you're negotiating requests, all of a sudden you get a contingency removal, bring it into the request for repair, because that could be used as an argument to get out if you represent the buyer and things don't get done correctly, repairs. Then you can say, well, we only were willing to release our contingency if you did these repairs for these repairs, and since you never did them, therefore we never released. And you at least have that clause that could argue.
Redundancies are a friend at times.
At times.
Contracts and stuff. It's like, I said that 4 times in 5 different ways, like you guys caught that, right?
That was a win for us because she didn't check the box RPA. She checked requests, and that ultimately, I think, did win the case for us. If the agent hadn't made our clients happy, then we had a valid argument.
Interesting. Contract nuances. Good look. And the RR. Nope. CR. Yeah, I guess while we're on the CR, some sellers get confused all the time because if you have a cover sheet filled out, you've been doing a good job with your contracts, you put the seller's name anywhere on a form in your zip forms file, it's going to auto-populate the seller down there in that little box, number 2, Roman numeral 2. Your seller probably doesn't have any contingencies to waive. So the question on this form is who signs it and where. When the buyer signs it and says, okay, I'm good, I waive those contingencies, everybody's happy. The seller signing there doesn't do anything to the buyer's contingencies. How do we let the buyer know that we got that, we're cool with it, your contingencies are waived because we signed for receipt and all that junk? Where's that at?
Hey, Gary,
Yeah.
it's Melissa. I have a question before we go any
Where's
further.
it?
Huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I just asked a question though. Can you answer it?
what is it?
Where do you sign to confirm?
You signed to confirm at the very bottom that you received it. But let's just say you send it your contingency removal and there is a seller contingency on other. There's an addendum that they put. They didn't use the COP form. They used an addendum to back up the RPA for the sale of a property. So you send the contingency removal over that the Mr. Buyer is going to remove all the contingencies. That box is checked. Then you have the other under seller removal of seller contingencies, right? You put the addendum that they were supposed to lift that contingency on finding a replacement property, and you send it over to the seller. Seller does not confirm the receipt, and seller does not sign the seller removal of contingencies. What do you do at that point? Or your contingencies released?
For starters, what does the contract say? We have no idea what the contract says. So we're going to assume, for the sake of argument in the example, that it's time for the seller to waive. Is that right?
Yeah, well, the seller, the seller is not releasing their replacement property.
Why do they have to?
Well, because the buyer wants to lock in the property. The buyer wants to remove all the buyer wants to close, but
what if it's not time? I mean, what is it? And then what did the seller's addendum say? But let's, I guess, aside from all that.
Okay, so my question is, how long can a seller sit on this form without acknowledging it?
Well, that's the wrong question to ask, because what does your addendum say is how long they can sit on it, is what Gary's point is.
There was a date on the addendum. There was a physical date.
Okay. So what do you have to do? What do you have to do in the contract to get somebody to waive a contingency? You got to notice them. Did you notice them?
No.
Of course, they're not going to sign it.
But so can they say that I released my?
That's what I'd say. You have to notice.
But can they say that I released my contingencies if they never acknowledged it?
Yes, I'll stop you right there. The seller or the authorized agent can sign that thing. So is it the seller is not, so if the seller never signs that says I'm releasing the seller removal,
right,
the buyer still released theirs, and the agent can just confirm that they received it. But you're still in dispute over whether or not the seller is the seller going to release theirs or not.
And I think that's right, and then that's on the buyer's agent. You have to make sure somebody signs the bottom of that, right?
Right.
Get it back from them, because this is not like the offer and the counter offer and all that stuff where it says the lack of these initials, we don't need them to create a binding contract. We don't. There's nowhere else for anybody to confirm receipt of this, so you just gotta make sure that somebody on their side initials that thing at the bottom and gets you a copy of that back. If that's what you want your buyer to do, waive your contingencies. And if you follow up on all that stuff, I think is the answer to that. Then you know what to do. When we leave these hanging chads all over the place, then everything's up in the air. You don't know what the hell you're doing.
So Melissa, I'm assuming you're representing the buyer.
Yes.
Yeah, and you sent over in good faith a contingency removal, thinking that the seller was going to remove theirs as well.
Yes.
Okay. So now you would respond to the seller because they didn't. You're going to have to notice the seller. But before you do, you have to pull that addendum and verify what date the seller was mandated to release the contingency.
Okay.
Since you guys used an addendum, I'm sure there's some language missing that clarifies it all. But if it's very spelled out that the contingency or the seller was supposed to find a replacement property by this date, and they have not, then you would notice them. And if they have not found one, their response is, we haven't found a property, therefore we're going to cancel. What you should try to negotiate is the COP. Get you guys on track with the proper form of the COP, because that will spell out everything.
The seller's form is different.
Oh, I'm sorry, the SRP.
There's 4 letters, yes.
Yeah. SPRP.
SPRP.
But ultimately, the only thing you can do is notice them to say you are out of contract for our amendment.
Okay.
And if they don't get on contract, you have the right to cancel. And even though you waived your contingencies, they're the breaching party. Therefore, your deposit wouldn't be at risk. Am I correct?
Yep. Sounds good to me.
So if that's
why the
concern,
SPRP's got more than one checkbox on it. And they're going to change it again because they're changing the COP. I don't know for sure. They're changing the COP in December. They'll probably change the SPRP to go with it. Or SPRP. There's 2 or 3 instances that are handled on the SPRP that probably were ignored in that addendum, unless they just pasted the language. You'll see that too. And I'm okay with, I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about all that stuff. I'm okay when they use the wrong form and tell them, go get the right form. Or send them one or something like, you know what? We have a form for that. And it's hard for me to do it without trying to make them feel stupid because they just get so frustrated with it. But it's like, oh, hey, I just, want to bring your attention. There's a form for that probably describes better what you guys are trying to do. What do you think? You want me to go with this crazy addendum you got going on here?
Well, when you're an agent of only 6 years,
Oh, yeah, day one when they did the form wrong.
But if you're concerned about the addendum, if you want to shoot it over, I'll review it with you to make sure that.
Okay.
Ultimately, that's the thing. You're going to have to notice the seller and let them know, hey, we agreed on something and you haven't done it yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that, have they found a replacement property?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Was there addendum contingent on them closing escrow on their
Was it
replacement
a
property?
concurrent close?
Yeah.
No, it does not say concurrent close. And
Then that addendum is why you're supposed to use the SR. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. All right.
okay.
Yeah. Well, there might be
We'll talk
some training in
afterwards.
there, but you guys already know all that, right? Everybody knew the crazy 4 letters. All right.
We'll talk afterwards.
Pretty much, right? That's exactly. I like that. There's no little flip. Right. Over here.
Tack on one more RPA day.
I told Kristen you were gonna finish.
Yeah, that's because
I
I used to do paragraph 14 was a day. Because paragraph 14 is huge, and all the garbage that happens in the deal almost comes out of paragraph 14. Once you're through with paragraph 14, there's not much left in this thing. So you burn through 3 whole pages. Okay, the rest of it was just like FYI, pretty much. Right? Where are we? I have yet to see this form show up, maybe once. I can't remember. I remember a few things like that. So, consideration whenever you're canceling a deal is always the deposit. And the very confusing cancellation form we have now actually handles the deposit. So you see down at 14H, effective cancellation on deposits. I'm going to go back a bit. They changed the language in there. It's funny because they went to all the title companies and go, we're going to change the language to try to get you guys off the hook and get these deposits out one way or the other. What do you think about that? So the title companies all worked on the language, and then the day we wrote the contract in 2014, they all bitched about the language how it came out. I never did quite understand. But there's a couple of forms in there, a BDRD or an SDRD, which is a demand for deposit. So we have a form now that when this thing runs over, I think it's 10 days over, something like that. Read that form for home. Read that paragraph for homework. I've had those deposits get hung up. It's like the buyer goes, man, my daughter's a lawyer. You can suck it. My client's a bank. Just saying. You're looking at deposits, not 100 G's. You lousy 14 grand. Gee, doctor. No one knows what house that is. Sold the house like right off the guy closed it for somebody else, beat it. That deposit got hung up until Kathy Moore called up one day and was sick of looking at it. She goes, somebody better do something where I'm releasing that deposit. And where I got that in an email, and we got out of the car, no phone signal. I thought, give me back to town right now because Kathy's going to get a piece of my mind. Oh, no, you're not. My client's a bank. It was bigger. That helped a little bit, this whole demand to release. So if the buyer was really putting a bunch of pressure on Kathy and all that stuff, she could say, send me that form. She fill out that form. We got something to work on. We'll notice the other side. We'll make it all happen. We'll try to address this thing. So escrow just getting tired of it. That's a nuanced question. If there's a deposit hung up in escrow, like seller won't turn loose, won't give it back, the buyer wants it, the buyer says, you have no right to my money, all that stuff. And they can't seem to decide. They're gonna mediate, arbitrate, sue each other, whatever it takes, however the contract is set up. They just can't get it together. It's been a little while. Escrow has some relief. It's like bonus points. Anybody know what that's called? Escrow can do something, just get out from under the deposit. I don't know why I learned this term very early on, something must have happened. There's going to be a court action called an action in interpleader, where the escrow goes to the court and says, I'm an innocent party, get me off the freaking hook here. So if you ever hear about escrow saying, we're going to do an action in interpleader, your deposit is about to just go somewhere else. And some attorney or somebody's going to become the custodian and you're going to wind up in court. They say action in interpleader, you pay attention.
Doesn't mean they're releasing it to either party.
They're going, we're tired of having this, because they're bookkeepers. They hate having undone files. Right? So off it goes, and their legal department handles it or whatever. I don't know what happened with an action. They don't like it. But that's just a good form to know.
Does it have a time frame on when they have to do that?
I don't know.
Do they have to, notice or alert somebody that that's happening?
Well, there's parties to the contract, and escrow is two things: a disinterested third party that just follows instructions. But they do have I'm not too sure it's a client relationship. They have a relationship with the buyer and seller as a service provider or something. They can't just make decisions for the buyer or seller. They're not ever supposed to make a decision ever. Like never.
So do they let both buyer and seller
know?
Hey, we're getting out of this
because they're both their clients. Because when you got they don't take one side or the other. They handle the whole thing. Sit in the middle of that. Liquidated damages and arbitration. We can do a minute on that. Look at my watch. I still got a minute. What do we do on it? How do you explain liquidated damages and arbitration to people? You can take those one at a time.
We'll go over here and sign.
Should we explain them?
Yes.
We should explain. How in the heck are we going to do that? It's like over my pay grade to explain that to anybody. Okay, CAR's got some, what do they call them, FAQs, Q&As, whatever they are. They got some handouts to go with these. That's I'm told, the safest way to explain it. I'm really bad at explaining it, but I can tell you how to do it. Rapidly. There's a couple things you need to know about the liquidated damages clause. I just ran into that in a deal about a month ago. One is it really doesn't come into play until there's a breach. I mean, somebody has to have done something that, like, the contingencies are all gone or something. There are loopholes, so to speak, in the contract going through. Opportunities, cancellation rights and stuff. If we've used up all of our cancellation rights and somebody does something that causes a huge problem, it could be a breach. So liquidated damages is a remedy for breach, remedies for buyer's breach of contract. So breach it's kind of bad news, which is why a lot of times the deposit winds up getting handled, and that's it. Liquidated damages basically is, we've all agreed that the buyer's deposit is enough money to make the seller whole. The seller says that they got 25 grand up, they breach, I'll take their 25 grand and I will sue. So long story short, with liquidated damages clauses, it's in your cell phone contract, probably your electric bill. They're just everywhere. The thing to know about that is in residential 1 to 4, there's a limit on how big that deposit can be. I just had a bank client that wanted the deposit to go like through the roof. And so you're a little over the legal limit for a liquidated damages in there. So if you're trying to make the guy feel the pain, like, you might as well stop at the liquidated damages. Of the purchase price. So for a $100,000 deal, it's like $3.
So it is not deposit plus 3%.
Yes,
I've heard
the
that.
deposit, yeah, it's deposit, a maximum. Well, it says, right?
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. If buyer fails to complete the purchase because of the default, shall retain the deposit actually paid. If the property's residential 1 to 4, The amount retained shall be no more than 3% of the purchase price. So the deposit is what's agreed. So keep the deposit, but it can't be any more than 3% of the purchase price for whatever reason. And commercial, like, that's out the window. It's at least $1 million deposits on it.
Now, if they had, say, 2,000, but 3% was 10,000, can they go after 10,000?
No, they have no rights to go after anything except the deposit. The deposit actually paid, but it can't be any more than 3%. And I can see where one of these smart guys will try to make that argument, but I'm reading the deposit actually paid as pretty clearly. Not the deposit I made up after you.
I wanted A again.
Yeah, because basically, is the rest of that money in escrow? No. Good luck getting that. Yeah. You come to my house, try to beat it out of me, see how that goes. It's not there. The $2,000's in escrow. You know, that's what you're going to talk about in the cancellation is the $2,000. So arbitration, another clause we fought tooth and nail. We were the last office years and years ago to give in and say, all right, fine, we're going to make the rest of you knuckleheads that keep countering this back in happy by trying to do a better job of not deterring our clients from signing it, because we told them we're never going to recommend that someone waive their right to sue, because that's what happens. When you got a broker that's a free law guy, he's all about the suit. That's kind of the trouble with arbitration, and why it's really good to, I think that giving them the handout is great advice that I've never taken and always gotten. What I tell them often is that it's pretty common to have this in. That's about all I know about it. You guys familiar with these? Now, some of them they know. We get a client that says, that never happens in my stuff. I don't care who you are. I had a client just do that to the home inspector. Butch has an arbitration clause in his inspection contract. Wouldn't hire Butch because I'd never do that. Not with you either. So if you run into that guy, he's made his decision. That's easy. So back to handling the contract. So the liquidated damages, the buyer initials it. Arbitration, buyer leaves it blank. And we send it to the seller, and the seller is a huge fan of arbitration. So what do you do?
Counter it in.
Counter it in. And it says right on the counter offer, any clauses requiring initials by both parties, if you want it, are out unless initialed by both parties or handled in the counter offer. Figure out one of the candidates. The last thing we'll do is
Okay, so if one party signed it and the other party did not, is that an executed contract or that clause is just taken out?
that clause is just out. Yeah.
You
That's
can
where
argue
we've
that
gone.
that contract is not valid because all signatures are not.
Exactly right. Yeah. Nobody has to sign that, and if one person proposes it, you can leave it out and still accept the offer.
I thought an optional meant that there was a box around, kind of like the escrow part on the bottom.
Well, optional or the box usually means not a party to the contract.
Okay. not a
That's the way
party.
we are too.
Okay.
This is something else. It's almost like we have another contract between some different people, but we stuck it on page 12 because it was just easier, or 10 or 15, whatever this thing is. Same with the escrow holder.
Does that go for any clauses, like say they didn't initial page 2? Would all of page 2 be out of the contract?
No, that's not a clause requiring agreement by everybody. So liquidated damages, that's why there's initials in the middle of the page, where it says, okay, I'm here's my offer. Now inside my offer is this other thing that's kind of not everybody likes, and I want it. How do you feel about it? You leave it blank, it's out. And there's schools of thought that say you don't have to initial all the pages. I think those initials in the RPA will always be there because everybody's been, especially since bank repo day, real sensitive to like, did you present my offer? So some initials there would help. Like the SBSA, they had initials on every page for a while. Now we don't. Doesn't mean I didn't receive that page or want to talk about what's on there. I signed page 10, like 12, 14, whatever it is. I got it. First time, I just gave you some legal advice. Good luck. That's what I think.
You don't have the reputation.
Pardon?
You don't have it fully executed if you don't have the reputation.
You don't think so? You got another opinion? Counselor? Well, I get
That's
it,
right,
right?
they come back and say, well, I never saw page 3.
They agreed to it, so probably have to go
I
back.
never signed it.
I think you can argue both.
I don't know, who's gonna win that either? I mean, that's the easiest thing here, right? If they miss one, like, especially when I get a buyer sending me a contract with, like liquidated damages, like arbitration initial liquidated damages blank or something, first thing I'll do is ask the agent, did you miss one? Half the time they go, crap. I go back to the guy and go, hey, we talked about that, you wanted that in, you can DigiSign or DocuSign or whatever, you missed it. It's easy to do, unless you make that, you can make those fields mandatory in your signing software, but most of them are optional. I mean, by default, they're optional in the signing software. I know in DocuSign they are, unless you make it mandatory. So the buyer's going through, they're real comfortable with the contract. You talk about everything already. They just go click, send. We missed them both. And they wanted them in. They just flew by them, you know. So whenever I get like something screwed up, missing some initials, I'll just ask them. And if I can get all the initials on the bottom of the page, that's what I want to. If they don't initial page 3, I'll tell them you did initial page 3. Your transaction coordinator, that's all. Yeah, right. Because TC is going to go, you missed the spot. I'm just saying. It happened here, buddy. Your expiration of offer. I guess the only thing I want to say about that is at the end of the time, at the end of the expiration time. So, and the default is 3 days from the date the last buyer signed it. If they sign it on 2 different days, like he signs today and she signs tomorrow, so all your counting for this expiration starts from her signature. She's a little late to the party, but we're going to use her signature. When it expires, I know everybody knows this one. Can the seller still accept it? It's good, right? You have a legal argument that maybe your intention was that you wanted it to happen, but it's really, really bad contracts. If it's expired and then you have to sign it anyway, it could be, now you're really, I mean, if you're going to miss an initial and talk about how to have a contract, how about signing a dead offer? I'm really going to have a hard time pushing out.
So you're saying if it expires, the seller can sign and then hold the buyer accountable to that offer?
I'm saying you can't.
I'm saying you can't.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say. It's like, can they sign an expired offer? Yeah. Is it going to stick? Good luck with that. There's stuff in the law about, you know, intent and all that other junk, which, you know, then the buyer and seller go and open escrow and all that stuff. If they're starting to build a case of like, yeah, we don't understand expiration dates. We want this deal as the public. So the farther they get down the road, the more the court's going to go, you know, you guys acted like you were doing that deal. So you don't tell me now you don't. And that happens. Yeah, you got to wake it back up. How many days do you have to wake it back up? Unlimited. The rest of the time. As long as you're alive, you can wake it back up. If you're dead, somebody else did. Well, any questions or more arguments or discussions? That kind of stuff kept you long enough.
Well, I would just add for the new people that did their RPA counter, and the seller still has to go through and sign the original purchase agreement. That's fine.
Yep, you see that all the time. You get a counter offer back and you're like, have you seen my RPA lately? What's up? And one of the main reasons that has to happen, right, is liquidated damages and arbitration. They got to do something with that RPA to indicate what they like about the RPA. And if they want liquidated damages, they're going to initial it and then they're going to counter it because it died. So they got to use the counter to wake it back up, but they're waking up the thing that they initially wrote all over the nonsense. Make sense?
That's right. It's very common to just get the counter offer. So a good agent would respond back, can you send my RPA too, so I can present the whole offer to my client. Say, I know what you sign.
Yeah, there's a couple things I have no idea. I don't have any idea how you guys treated liquidated damages and arbitration, unless they addressed them in the counter. That's possible. You could do that. You better show up somewhere, because if you're a buyer, initial them both. They got to be treated somewhere, somehow by the other side.
What most people want to see happen is, oh, we'll just negotiate the counter.
Yeah.
And then we'll clean up the
We're going
contracts.
to counter offer 5, and then we'll go back and
You might find yourself in a predicament 5 days after you get an acceptance that just gets a bad taste in the mouth right from the get-go. That's why you try to avoid that.
Good advice. But, okay, you're done. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, everybody, for showing up and being here and all that participation.
I still don't understand the arbitration then, because I thought if they didn't sign it, it's not a valid contract, because we don't have a free next week. Where does it say a clause? It's a clause, not a term. How would I explain that? How do I argue that?
Let's go back to there. There's a bigger room. Blah, 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 blah. I know there's language in the counteroffer that talks about it, but there better be something in here.
At the time, clause acted by the only specified.
Better read the silver.
Yes, it's a big one.
We can do arbitration.
And so the mediation provision applies whether or not your arbitration provision is initial, so that's why it doesn't have initial places.
Okay.
I'll have to go find that.
We have read the understanding for going and agreed states arising out of matters of church. I mean, that I get that all the time. It's like, well, one party signs, one party doesn't, and Bissy says that Gov says that this contract is now void because it's not executed.
That's why I like to go to all those meetings. I want to hear what they hear.
Mark's saying absolutely not. It's just kind of the same with you. It just takes that clause out. Because ultimately, we don't have a resolution of how are we going to dispute this whole contract. So then what Mark said is you'd end up going to court to argue whether or not you're going to arbitrate or not. Doesn't invalidate the contract, it invalidates how you proceed with the dispute.
Says something here. That's what I've been told from day one, so we'll just have to get something that back.
Okay. All right.
Been emailed.
At the end of the day, I tell everybody, you just need to have an agreement. So if you're not going to initial it, then say you're not going to initial it. If you're going to initial it,
Yeah, best way
initial
is
it. Yeah,
make
just
it clear.
clarify what it is.
Blah, 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 blah. Whoops. All right, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Don't let me forget. Somebody click that email me. I'm supposed to look this up. Normal. We're normal. Oops, did I do something? Okay, shutting you all off, I think, somehow.